Welcome. Here we are looking at a Sequelize Association specific review. This video might be a little bit awkward because I'm an idiot and I did not record the audio when I actually did the live review. So I might skip around a little bit, we'll see. So let's take a look at the repo as it stands now. Before the last commit of the final thing, I've added a number of different models for food, location, and park because we want to associate these things and I don't want to spend a ton of time building them up. They're all now in another folder and they're being brought into this root.db file, which requires all the things. So we'll put the associations below there. And I've made some really basic routes for each of them so that we can get to work with them together and that we don't spend a ton of time in this review going over how to actually write those routes. Check the express part. So there's also a seed script to populate the database with some stuff. If you want to take a look at it, it'll populate each of those models, but not associate them at all. We're going to go and do some of that otherwise. So this is in the Sequelize Associations branch, which I think will be pulled into master by the time you see this video. Check out the other branches, which are linked to in the repo, if you wanted to see where the other stages are. So we're going to seed the database. We see that we added these things. And then if we fire up Postico and check out the puppies, we'll see that we have some seeded locations, parks, etc. We've got everything there that we're looking for. So I'm going to show you what we're sort of planning to do with this review session. There's some information up here about the Sequelize methods and associations, what you get. But let's look at it. So we're going to say that puppies have a lot of foods that they like, and foods can be enjoyed by many puppies. So that's going to be a many-to-many relationship, and we'll talk about how to set that up. Obviously, puppies like many foods, and foods are not dependent on the puppies, that they enjoy them. Also, each puppy has a favorite park. I think we did this at the very end of the final review, and we're going to try to alias it at favorite park. Each park also is going to be linked to a single location, so that's going to be a one-to-one relationship between the two of them. And we want to also then build and modify our routes that allow it to actually use these associations. So maybe when we grab our puppies, they come back with their favorite foods, we use some eager loading, etc., etc. We'll take a look back at that as we go. So if there are any questions, I'm going to write those down now. I think there are no questions in the live review at this point, so I'm going to go ahead and jump ahead a little bit in the video. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the associating the parks to parks to locations, because I set up a little bit of a route to sort of get us started with this. So when we say park belongs to location, what we actually are doing there is we're putting a foreign key for location in the parks model. So park will by default have a location ID. Sequelize is going to make that a camel case by default unless you specify that it's going to be a snake case with your underlining. That's in the model definition itself in the options. Not going to worry about that too much. You can check it out in the Sequelize docs if you want. And it's going to give us these magic methods. When we do belongs to, it's going to give us a .setLocation and a .getLocation. So it's going to give us a create that we're not going to talk about a lot yet. But that location seems kind of magical. It's just the name of the model that it's actually grabbing from that model. So setLocation and getLocation. All right, so let's check out this put route that I made. And here we're going to grab a single park by ID, and then we're going to say that when we're putting to /location, we're going to update the park that's associated with that location. Sorry, rather update the location ID on the park. All right, we have an error. Let's see, location ID does not exist, and I believe that is because we just added an association, and we need to actually reseed the database. Sorry, it's going to be node.cjs. In the final repo, there are actually seed scripts for seeding this stuff with npm run seed and npm run seed all. And then when we restart the thing, we can grab all of the locations. So that's an important thing. You need to rebuild the database. You need to force true whenever you change an association. And that's happening by default in my seed script. So as we load them up, by default, there are no associated things, so the location ID is going to be null. Okay, so as I said, by default, location ID is null, so let's go ahead and actually make some location ID associations here. All right, in our router, we're looking to match by a park ID because we're here mounted at the parks router, and we want to find that router based on the ID. And then, once we've found the park, there's a little bit of error handling there, or rather, if it's not found, we're going to send a 404. Otherwise, we would like to use this magic method, setLocation, to set the location to the rec.body.location_ID. So as you can see, we need a location ID prop on the rec.body itself. Set location, again, that's one of those magic methods. We could also do found park, and we could update it, and we could manually set the location ID to the ID itself. But it's nice to use these magic methods. We're returning it there on line 34 because that's returning a promise. Is an async action, actually changing something in the database, persisting it. And then we're going to send back whatever we get back, and we'll see what that is. So if we go ahead, we go into our parks router, we change it to, so we actually need to find the location that we want to associate. So we're going to do full stack park, and that's on the 11th floor of 5 Hanover Square. And it's ID 1. So we're going to remember that. We're going to go to parks, find all the parks. I just want to find out which one is full stack park. I'm going to go there, and I believe it's 3. Do we find it? It is 2. So we're going to go to park/2/location, and we are going to change it to a put request, update, and we're going to go to body and put a location ID. And the location ID that we're looking for is 1, I believe, which is 5 Hanover Square, the 11th floor. We update, we get back full stack park, and we can see that its location ID is 1. So again, all that set location is doing is putting a foreign key on the park for a location, which can then be accessed. And you could easily load this, but in this case, all we're doing is actually just creating that association by putting a foreign key in the park. Nothing magical at all about these magic methods, even though I keep calling them magic methods. All right, and you can see what we're getting back is the park with the change. Oh, there was a question here about what I'm doing on line 36. By default, you need to bind this because res, if you don't bind it, there's no this context here. So in order to bind the this to the response object, .send internally needs a this context, so that's just doing it on one line. It's the same thing as doing an arrow function and doing res dot, saying like response or whatever, created park association, and then saying res.send created park association or something like that. But it's a nice way to just do it in one line. It's a little bit slicker. All right, so yeah, let's go ahead and set this so that we actually are going to be able to do something with the information. Right now, again, we're just getting location ID. It's not very helpful to us. So let's talk about eager loading. How do we go ahead and actually get back all these locations with the parks in a way that we can do something helpful with them? Because, on the front end, having an ID, maybe not necessarily that helpful to us in this case. So we're going to use eager loading. And do that, you use the include, and you provide it an array of things to include, array of associations. A lot of different ways to do this. One way is to actually put the model itself in there, to import the model into your routes. And then you see we still have the location ID. But now, where there is a location, we actually get the instance itself, and it's called location. So, for instance, if we had a one-to-many relationship, maybe we'd have locations. We'd maybe have multiple of these. Another way to just kind of get everything is to do include all true, and then you'll see when we go back and make that again, we're going to get everything. So in this case, not that big of a difference because we only have one association. But it's a nice shorthand if you just want to kind of get everything. It's a good thing for, get all, or sometimes when you're populating front-end storage or something like that. We're going to look at eager loading, and we're going to look at nested. You can nest these as much as you want. You can also call the model, and you can refer to it as an alias. That's important when you have actually aliased the model. So here, I believe I'm going to try to actually change what location is aliased as and call it, favorite location, park address or something like that. And then when we try to run it, we'll see that we're going to get an error back. That's because park address is not associated to park. So those do need to actually match if you want to do something with them. You actually need to use the actual alias name or just the model name. In addition, you can nest where statements if you want to match things if you want to include based on some sort of actual query sort of thing. So in this case, we're just going to go ahead and do the location. and that's good enough for us right now. Actually, we'll go ahead and change this back to all true, just to keep it in the repo. So it's an example of how to grab everything when needed. Now, I'm not sure about the cascading of all true. We'll check it out a little bit later. See sort of if you have nested associations, whether it's going to happen. Okay, so let's go ahead and actually create some more of these. So we're going to set up the puppies and foods relationship together. And puppies are going to have a lot of different foods that they like. And foods, of course, can be enjoyed by many different puppies. So this is going to be a many-to-many relationship. All right, so here in our associations place, you'll see that we've imported our models, and we can set up our associations below. It's important to export the database before you go ahead and do this model association sometimes, because you can run into weird things where the models are being defined with the db.define. You have to import the db. It can be possible to get yourself into some weird situations here for circular dependencies and stuff like that in Sequelize. Okay, so we're going to have a many-to-many association between these puppies, and that's going to mean that we're going to have a join table. So let's look at many-to-many relationships and see how to set them up in Sequelize. And we're going to go to the API documentation here, and there's a lot of great stuff about associations. So here we're going to use belongs to many as an end-to-end relationship between two tables or relations. So we are going to set up, and we're going to see that we are going to say puppy dot belongs to many. We're going to put in our model here, our target model. Now, the target model and the source model have more to do with the belongs to many, with the where the methods are going to go, as opposed to what's having a foreign key, because there are no foreign keys. So we're going to alias it as fave foods, and then we're going to define a through table instead of foreign keys. And the through table, the join table, sorry, is going to be what's going to associate these two things. And we're going to call it puppies foods. That's pretty common. And then we sync the DP. That's good. We're going to reseed, and then we're going to start up. And so now if we get, just to prove the point here, if we get all puppies, we're going to see that it has not changed at all, right? We still have this fave food, and that's actually left over from our previous definition of the model, where we had a single fave food, which is being defined on the puppy as a string. In this case, there's nothing actually in the model showing you that the puppies have this many-to-many relationship with foods. That's because of the join table, which is going to match the IDs against each other. I'm going to go ahead and actually get rid of this fave food thing just to not muddy the waters at all. Save it, and then we're going to seed it again. The previous puppies are all going to go to puppy heaven, and we'll add some new puppies. There we go. And you'll see, no favorite food. But we do have that association. It is real. You have to trust me on this for now, but it is a real association in the database between the puppies and foods. So if we now go and we want to check that, we're going to go ahead and add some eager loading into our puppy find all. So we're going to include, so that we can get anything through the join table, and we're just going to include all true, because we're going to be lazy. And then if we go and we want to see what happens, we're going to post go, we're going to get all puppies. You'll see that fave foods is an empty array. It's good. It's nice, right? It says an empty array back, doesn't send us null or anything like that, so it's sending us something that's going to match the same data type, which is nice of Sequelize to do when you're using these includes with many-to-many relationships. So let's go and see about updating a particular puppy. Maybe we can add some foods to it. So here we have a route where we're updating a puppy based on a rect.query. Maybe we want to go ahead and actually add something at a different route. So we're going to create a router dot post. So post for creating something new. And we're going to match it by ID. We're going to go to food, maybe. Let's think about adding a new food to a puppy and think about what that might go. We're going to add our normal Express boilerplate for a route. And then we're going to go ahead. And what do we have to do first? So first we're going to have to actually get that puppy, right? Let's find it by ID. That seems pretty easy. And then we need to somehow update it. So we're going to get back to found puppy. Then we need to go ahead and add a food, which is based on that. So with our many-to-many relationships, since we have a possibility of many, we don't necessarily want to use the set and get as much. We want to use these other Sequelize methods for adding some things like this. So we're going to get some sort of food ID in the rect.body. And the reason that we put this as a router.put is that we're not really creating a new food. We're updating a puppy's associations with a new food. So for now, in a more fully designed API, we might want to figure out another way around this. But for now, this is going to do set our purposes fine. So we're going to do puppy.setFood. Let's see about that. What happens when we do this? This is suggested by a student. We're going to do rect.body.foodID, which seems reasonable, and then we're going to send the response in our slick res.send.bind, and we'll just use a little error handling as we always should. Now what happens if we put to puppy number one, and then in our body, we're going to set the food ID to 1. See what happens. Okay, error. Puppy.setFood is not a function. Now, why might that be? In our many-to-many relationship, does it make sense to say that we're setting the food of the puppy? Could be that we're not returning a promise. That was a very good catch. But related to setFood, it makes sense to say that we're setting a single food for many-to-many. Puppy.setFood is not a function. So, best way when this happens, when you think you've got a magic method in Sequelize, but you're getting some sort of weird error, is to go check the docs and actually see what Sequelize docs say about those magic methods. Let's see, setFood is not a function. Set puppy food, try that out. Because we've got these puppy foods. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe we have puppy foods. Maybe it's puppy.setFavFood. And setFavFood is because we are grabbing it from this alias thing, where puppy actually has a fave food. That's how we're responding to it. So if we set fave foods, let's see what happens when we update this. Okay, so we have the full name. That's because there's some getter that we have on the puppy that we should probably alter. But we've got a puppy ID and we've got a food ID. That seems pretty cool, right? We've got a food ID to associate these things. Our food ID is a string, but it still works. We can see that with our include all, we have puppy number 1 enjoying pizza, which is ID number 1. That's great. Puppy doggo loves pizza. Wonderful. So we set fave foods. Now, what about when we use this put route to add another fave foods? By the way, this full name undefined, that has something to do with our getter setter, with our getter method, which we'll have to take a look at and see if we can figure out a better way around in the future. But set associations, what does set associations do? We give it an array, and it sets association models by overriding. But we also have these add associations and add association. There's all these different methods that are given to us. And add associations seems like it might be more in line with what we want to do. We're going to just add more favorite foods to these puppies. We don't want to reset all their favorite foods with a single route. It seems like it might be cruel. But if we add a favorite food, then if we go back to Postman, and we want to go back to putting a request to puppies 1 food, and we want to add another favorite food to this puppy because it's a growing little puppy. Now we get this, which is returned by res.send. And then when we go back and we want to get all puppies, we will see that Puppy Doggo has 2 favorite foods now. Pizza. And they're both in this favorite foods array. Likes pizza. We get the puppy's foods thing because we're included all, and it looks like it's cascading down in some way. And then we get dumplings. Wonderful. Okay, cool. So that seems like a reasonable route for now. One thing about these add fave foods is that here we're passing an ID to a lot of these magic methods in Sequelize. You can either pass an instance or an ID. So we go back to set fave foods. There's a question about what happens here again. We go to put and we set the, and let's just change it to 3. You'll see that. That's weird. What happened there? Seems like maybe we are 1 behind in our query or something. Okay, there we go. Now if we get all puppies. Oh, puppies. Get all puppies. Now we'll see that the puppy only likes lettuce. That's weird. Sometimes I've gotten this strange bug with Postman where it sort of puts you 1 off in your requests. So that's what set fave foods does. It's actually going to overwrite the favorite foods relations in that join table. And that's maybe not what we want to do in this case. Again, you could make your API have all sorts of routes to deal with these things if you want to, but we're going to change this back to an add fave foods for now. And again, if you look at the finished repo, you'll see that there's a lot of comments in addition to what we covered in the live review. There's a lot of comments in the repo to kind of handle other things. All right, so let's look at the rest of the associations we might want to be dealing with. More we could do with this many-to-many relationship, because right now, right, all of our magic methods are on the puppy model, and you can do puppy, set, add fave foods, etc., etc. But let's look at what we could do, how we might want to use it both ways. Say we want to find all the puppies that like a favorite food. Well, we can't do that except with a sort of bunch of chain things and stuff like that. It's going to be kind of annoying. So let's make it a little bit easier for ourselves, and let's associate these things together. So food belongs to many puppies as puppies, and we're going to see then that we can get all, and if we just go to our food and we maybe add and include all, theoretically we should be able to get all of the puppies that enjoy a particular food. Model puppy, and of course we have to alias this because we aliased it. It's aliased as puppies. Those aliases do need to match for this to work, I believe. And so we're going to go and we're going to get all of our food. We're going to get food by ID. Say 1. Uh-oh, puppy is not defined. Of course, because we have not required it. So now when we launch this puppy. Great. All right, so it looks like no puppies like pizza. That's ridiculous. Now, what about food 3? Oh, puppy doggo likes lettuce for some reason. Cool. So, puppies. Now, there's a question here about the through tables. These names should definitely match in this case because I can't think of a reason why you wouldn't want them to match, but it's going to make your life much easier if they're going with the same join table, if that's matching between the two associations. Belongs to many is really a matter of who is getting those magic methods. So by doing them both, we're going to make those magic methods be both on the puppy and on the food, and we can include them nicely between the two of them. Forget exactly, honestly, how including deals with belongs to many if you've only associated through one. Believe if there is a join table, it may actually do that for you, but we did not try that out here. But again, the aliases are up to you. That's how you're going to, from one model, refer to another model. But you can, those can be separate, but the join table with through properties should definitely match. As we can see, there's a question here, in the puppies, there's nothing, but in puppies foods, we get an ID for each one. Puppy ID and food ID. So those are going to match, but the nice thing about a join table is it doesn't pollute our model itself. There's nothing in puppies representing food, and there's nothing in food representing puppies. It's only through the join table that we've got a reference from those things to each other. But Sequelize kind of knows under the hood that those things are related, so when you include all, it's going to go ahead and grab that stuff for you, and it's going to give it to you as puppies. But you see there's no puppy ID. When we had location, we had a location ID and a location, which was the instance of the location that was associated if we included it. Here, there's no puppy ID in the model itself. There's no added thing with a many-to-many relationship because you need to have that join table to add them together. Yeah. So in parks, we included all true, which gave us the location. In puppies, we include all true, which gives us, through the join table, all of the foods. Unfortunately, we have a couple questions here. I can't remember what all of them were, but one of them was about these Sequelize magic methods. Again, there's nothing so magical about them. Really, they're just aliases for things that you know how to do yourself with Sequelize already. So for instance, instead of foundPark.setLocation, we could do foundPark.update, which is an instance.update, and we could update the location ID, right? With update, we just pass in a selection of key value pairs, which will update the instance. So we can pass the rec.body.location ID in this update object here. And then I don't know if we need this return object at all. But what we're doing here is a manual version of doing the step location, right? If we're just doing something with two models, especially this kind of one-to-one relationship, not so important. But set location is really just an alias for updating with that. Again, both of them async, both return promises, but helpful to know, yeah. Okay, so one thing I'd like to talk about now is something I don't think we've done much before, which is associating one model with itself. So in this case, we're going to think about a puppy having a best friend, which is another puppy. In this case, we're not going to worry too much about, reading in some sort of logic so that then that puppy that's the best friend must become best friends with the first puppy or something like that. We'll just treat this kind of like as elementary school, right? Where, like you have a best friend, but like maybe that best friend has another best friend or something like that. Not that puppies have more than one best friend, but that the best friend is not necessarily a reciprocal relationship. But that a puppy could be associated with another puppy as a best friend. So this is kind of weird, right? Because we have to associate a model with itself in order to do this. And again, we're going to do a one-to-one relationship with these elementary school puppies. Makes sense. They probably aren't more advanced in their studies yet than elementary school, I would imagine. So should puppies can have, that's an important point. So they can have a best friend puppy. So it's not required. We're not going to do any sort of validations with it or anything like that. But we're going to have one association possible for a puppy to have a best friend. So what do they belong to? I said before it has to belong to itself, right? So what happens if, yeah, all right, that makes sense. We should alias it. So that puppy is then going to have a best friend ID column on its model. That makes sense. What happens if we don't do it? Uh-oh. Looks like we got an error. Puppy that belongs to is not a function. That's interesting. Let's seed it again and try it out. Okay. Now, what about when we get puppies? Uh-oh, there we go. Table name puppy specified more than once. Okay. So that seems like maybe that's the kind of error that makes sense, where we're trying to say that a puppy belongs to a puppy, so you've got the table name puppy, and the puppy kind of doesn't make sense. But if we alias it, and we, of course, seed again, send the previous puppies to puppy heaven, and we load up, we will see, once we load up, okay, oh, table name puppy specified more than once. That's very interesting, isn't it? Did we not seed correctly? What didn't we do? Pretty sure we seeded. Okay, it's that weird off by one thing again. Okay, cool. So now we've got a best friend null in all these because we haven't actually made any associations. That seems reasonable to me. Now, again, that works because we aliased it. So that's why we get the best friend ID. So let's make a little puppy thing to set a best friend. So we've got this update already. So maybe we can go ahead and already use the update route that we have on a puppy and not worry about the magic methods for right now. But we can maybe we can make Omri and John best friends. Oops, sorry, John. I think I spelled your name wrong. But not really, because John's a puppy. Okay, so we got best friend ID, and we can set the best friend update of 5 to 6. We see what's returned to us is this John with a best friend ID of 6. Okay, that's interesting. ID of 5, best friend ID of 6. Now if you get puppies, believe we should get everything because we included all true. And then we see John's best friend is Omri. Nice. But Omri, as we see, has no best friends. Sad. All right, cool. So that's an association with itself. And this is something you're going to see a lot. For instance, maybe you've got a sort of a person model, and a person could have other persons who are their child or their parent or siblings or anything like that. It's a model that you're going to see fairly often when dealing with databases, where some model needs to refer to itself. So this is how you do it. Just make sure you always alias it. You're going to run into problems if you don't. You see Sequelize nice errors out, doesn't let us do anything sketchy. All right, let's check out. What else do we want to do with this? We've got a lot of different ways we could go. Well, we've got a puppy, could have a favorite park. That sounds like it might be good. A puppy to a park. Because what is that? A puppy to a park, that's not necessarily a one-to-one relationship, because each puppy has a favorite park because it's its favorite, but parks could be favorited by more than one puppy, right? So do we want this kind of belongs to and has one? It makes sense that we would have a puppy that could set park and could get park. But maybe we don't want to has one because the puppy could have a lot of different parks. Rather, sorry, a park could have a lot of different puppies. So maybe we want to have a has many instead. And again, what these two things are going to do is they're going to give those methods to the source model. But with one-to-many, we'll see that we have get associations, set associations, that's cool, add association, etc., etc. So we can get, we can set, we can add. And we could add because, right, a park could have many favorite puppies. But with both a belongs to and a has many, the key is going to go on the one rather than the many, right? So when we do park has many puppy, that's going to make sure that the park ID goes on the puppy model. And since puppy also belongs to park, we've got that single park ID on the puppy model. That they're sort of redundant in this case. But sometimes it's nice to have the belongs to and has many, because then we get the methods on both models. We get park.getPuppies, and we get puppy.set or get park. And there are more associations, rather more magic methods, of course. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that alias. I think we've done enough aliasing by now, so we can change that goal a little bit. So we've associated parks with puppies. We've associated puppies with themselves as best friends. We've associated puppies with foods with a many-to-many relationship. And we've associated parks with locations, can't remember if I said that, as a one-to-one relationship. Each park has one location. Each location has one park. But the key is only on the park. So I think we had a question here about API design, and then do you need, a separate route for everything that you're going to update, every association you're going to update? And it's a really good question, right? Because that seems like bad design, right? So we could actually set up something a little bit more flexible. I'm not going to necessarily have time to do it all right now, but rather than having, our association here as a single food, we could set up another param. Instead of add fave foods or something like that, we could do something like, puppy dot, and then we could interpolate a string here, right? We could say like add, use a template literal, and we could say add, and then we could say, association, rect.params.association, add face, add fave, right? If we had everything aliased as add fave something, we could say like router.put puppy1 slash treat, or I don't know, what else do puppies like, slash game. And then we would have add fave game, and then we could do the same thing with the rect.body, right? We could just like add the favorite thing. And that's one way we could handle it. We could use those magic methods. Another way, of course, would just be to take it a little bit more general and use a general update, like a general put route, to just add a food ID or a fave food ID or something like that. It kind of depends how you want your backend and your front end talking to each other. There's a lot of different ways that you could do that, and it really depends on like the use cases, how much you're expecting your front end to know about your backend, how complicated you want to make it. There are a lot of considerations here. I wouldn't say that I'm an expert in any way. For now, I'm just going to keep it as a fave foods, but using bracket notation with something like this is a way to make that very flexible. That's a very powerful tool that is kind of easy to forget, can be used for a lot more things than arrays, this kind of bracket notation, because there's a question like, if you just have to interpolate a string, how do you know which method to get? Well, bracket notation lets you do that. Lets you bring in a bunch of strings, and then you can get a method off of that puppy instance, which is great. You can Slack me if that was confusing. So let's think about one other thing we can do, and this is really interesting. It's not something I've had a lot of cause to use in the wild in Sequelize, but that's one where maybe we want to actually create a new food. We actually want to create a new food as we launch the puppy. Sorry, I'm just fixing this up a little bit. All right, here we go. So now say we want to actually like create a new food that a puppy loves. So how might we want to do that? Well, we're going to start with the router post because we're creating something new. Okay, there's something magical about post versus put in this case, but it's another way of self-documenting, and it's another way to differentiate between different actions. Don't worry too much about the sort of magical nature of any one HTTP verb for our case. A lot of that's abstracted away by Express and things like that. All right, so we're going to find that puppy by ID. We're going to set up our little, sending it, binding it. But one of the cool things is we get these create functions, which is really wild. What create does is it actually will make a new instance of the associated food and associate it in one fell swoop with puppy. And that's really crazy. So it belongs to, I think we're in belongs to many actually, right? But we can create an association. There we go, belongs to many. Go to create association. And you see that it takes a values object, right, which is like just our normal object that we're going to pass in. And then an options if we want to. We don't really need to worry about options for now. So this is going to create a favorite food based on the right.body. It's going to associate it with the puppy, and then it's going to send back whatever it sends back. And we'll kind of have to see what's sent back, right? Because we're not always sure. We can see maybe the Sequelize docs tell us something. I always find the best thing to do is just to go ahead, try out a route, and log things. So we're going to go to puppies/3/food to create a new food. And in the rec.body, we're going to add our food. I believe all our food needs is a name. Let's add mac and cheese. And then we can add a deliciousness, which I think is the only other key. Deliciousness. It's the only other key needed, and we'll say it's a 4. I think this is out of 5. Oh, something happened. What was that? Create fave whose column park ID does not exist. That's very interesting. What's happening here? Oh, is it a good idea? Let's console log the request.body. Scroll down. Okay, so we get the name, we get the deliciousness. That seems fine. We're getting an internal error somewhere. Park ID. Do we have to associate a park ID at the same time? No, that doesn't seem to be the issue. Huh, very interesting. What are we doing wrong? We are sending a post, we're hitting that route, params.id, and puppy, we're turning puppy to create fave food. Let's just restart the server, see what happens. Okay. Not getting an error this time. Very interesting. We're logging mac and cheese and deliciousness. It seems to be okay. Could we possibly be in our... Oh, okay. There we go. Not sure exactly what happened there, but there we go. And there we see. So we added to puppy1 a new food, which is mac and cheese, which is wonderful. Still has no best friend. Sad. Okay, cool. So here again, we could specify things. If we don't want to include everything, we just want to include the food and not worry about anything else of the puppy. Let's just see what happens. All right, we have to alias, of course. Alias is fav food. Thank you. And we'll see what happens. There we go. We got the foods. Wonderful. Again, if we had a park or best friend ID in this situation, we would not get those back with this include. So for our sake, again, we're going to go include all true. And again, that's an array because you could pass in a single object for every model that you wanted to include. Gives you a lot of flexibility. Router.param or app.param in Express, and where and when we might want to use it. In this case, it was drawing attention, we're getting something by an ID a whole lot. So it might be a good place for us to just go ahead and grab that thing by ID whenever it matched. And there's a function for this called router.param or app.param. In this case, since we're using Express router, it's given to us with router.param. It's because we've saved router as an instance of router. So what is the use of router.param? So the good thing about that is whenever it matches a parameter, and specifically the name of the parameter that it gives you, this function's going to run. And it's going to run, and the main use of it is putting something on the request body. Something on the request body that you could use, or not on the body, sorry, something on the request object itself that could be used by the further routes. So for instance, if we wanted to match on an ID, maybe we want to go ahead and then grab that thing from the database and say that we're going to just put a router.puppy, and it's going to set it to that object. So it's going to be really, really powerful for us. And to match against router.param, let's actually see what is used. So we're just going to take a name, which is the string, and then a matcher, okay, or regex. Okay, so it's going to take an ID. Let's call it ID because that's how we're referring to it later. And then it's going to take a function. That function is going to take name and then forward. So, all right, let's see. So I think it's like this. I could be wrong. And it's 4 arguments. I know that. Okay. And so what we want to do in this is we want to grab that specific puppy, and then we want to go ahead and grab it. So find by ID, cool. And then we're going to go ahead and take that puppy, found puppy, and we're going to say rec.puppy is equal to found puppy. So we're putting something on the request body. There was no rec.puppy before. This is not magic. We're going to call next, and then of course we're going to catch our errors if they happen. Now, what happens is we should then get access to a rec.puppy whenever we match something where the puppy matches. So here we're doing a find one, equivalent to a find by ID. We should then be able to just grab our puppy and send our puppy. We've already caught any errors that happen, so pretty much that whole route is now obsolete because we found a puppy and we have it as a rec.puppy. We can go ahead and put our error handling in here too, which is great, which we notice below. We say if there's no puppy, we can send a 404 and say no puppy found. Because again, if you do a find by ID or something like that and there's nothing, you're going to get a null response, which is falsy, which is great. We need to say if no puppy res, let's send status puppy. Else, we're going to go ahead and put this in an else because we're calling next. So if we call next and it matches some route after we've hit it, we're going to get something like header sent after set after sent or something like that. So in this case, looks like pretty much all this stuff is superfluous at this point. And since we've got a rec.puppy, we can just res.send that rec.puppy. We've already caught any errors that might happen, so we can just go ahead and send the whole thing. Let's see what happens. What if we get puppies1? Oh, we get an error. Argument passed to find by ID is invalid. Object. Uh-oh. Object, object. Well, I might have the signature wrong. So let's check the docs. We're going to go look for express app.param and check it out. Zoom in so we can all see. Uh-oh, and then it's going to make it very hard for me to define. I don't want rect.params. I don't want express.router. I want locals mount path. Okay. Sorry. The nice thing about responsive docs is they're responsive. The not nice thing is that they are responsive. Okay. Here we go. App.param user. Oh, and then the function signature is rec res next, and then the thing that you're passing in. So instead of this, we're going to do rec res next ID. Then let's give it a shot. Awesome. There we go. So we do the find once, makes our code a lot drier. So in this case, we now have a one-line router.get by ID. So same thing here, right? If we're adding a puppy, oops, sorry. Rather than finding it by ID, we can just say rec.puppy.add foods and then bind it and send it. Let's go ahead, let's do puppy1 food, and let's add a favorite food. Oh, food ID, sorry. 4. There you go. Full name undefined, undefined. Oh, I wonder if we have our off by 1 thing here. Maybe not. Okay. Yeah, so the whole purpose of a router.param generally is to put things onto the request body so that they can be accessed by further routes. You always want to catch next, or not catch next rather. You just want to call next after you've put that thing on the body, after you've done your async call, because otherwise it's not actually going to then match against the route that you want to match against and actually do the thing that you want. So we're going to add it to the rec.puppy, which is fine. I mean, the request is just an object, so we can add things to it willy-nilly if we want to. We can add as much stuff to it as we want. But important thing, the 4th argument of that callback function is the thing that you're matching against, whatever is matching the route, the the rec.params. And there was a question here about like, how do we know it's puppies? It's just because we're mounted at puppies. So we have 4 puppies file, or 4 router files, all mounted at a different thing. So /puppies, /food, /locations, /parks. So it's a pretty common pattern that you're going to see this sort of thing, where you're going to have different kind of category routers, and a lot of them are going to match on a certain ID. So you maybe just want to route it up param to match on that ID. It makes your code a whole lot drier. It's just really, really nice for that. Express does a lot of nice things like this for you. Let's take a look. Are there a few other ways we could go for the rest of this? I know we don't have tons of time left, but there are a couple other ways we could go. Creating a new park with associated location. I feel like we did that kind of with the foods and the puppies, adding a favorite food to a puppy, adding a location to a park. I feel like you probably have the tools at this point to do a lot of these things. We actually have that function because I wrote it. We have the tools to do a lot of these things at this point. And how modular you want to make your code is kind of up to you. You know, you can create an individual route for every one of these things. It's not very dry, but it can lead to some challenges too. A couple more things. I just want to talk about the API. These docs are really great. There's differences in the Sequelize docs between the definition and the API. Definition is great for whenever you're starting out, whenever you want to check the data types, whenever you want to find out about eager loading and the usage, things like that. So this top half of the docs is really good for like stuff like this. You know, that stuff I said about underscored property of camel case versus snake case in your foreign keys. It's really good for information like this. It's hard to search, right? But it's good because there's a lot of actual code examples, which I find to be really helpful. So you can actually see the different ways. As you know, there's a lot of different ways to do things in Sequelize. You know, for instance, with getters, you know, defining them on a model, defining them as a virtual, that kind of thing. So this part of the Sequelize docs is really great for that. The API stuff at the bottom, Really good for your magic methods, all things like that. Another thing, so I made this seed script, and you'll see actually in the final repo that's posted online, there is a seed association script based on the associations that we wrote in the live review, and as well as a couple others. And I just want to show you a couple things about how I went through this seed data. So again, I'm importing promise from Bluebird so that we can use promise.map, which is a really great function that will iterate through a promise array and do a callback function on it. Promise.map actually doesn't do it in order, which is interesting. But if you don't care for something like seeding a database in exactly the order in which the promise is resolved, promise.map is great because you can just do a callback function on that whole thing. So I can, for instance, when I get all the promises, do something with them. Excuse me. So we're going to use Bluebird for that. So just so that we can do capital P promise.map, we're going to import all of our models, and you'll see as we go down, we've got a bunch of different kinds of data. Each of these is an array, again, that we can iterate over. And I have two ways of seeding the database: park data, food data, location data, puppy data. And they're just the unique, the columns of each table without the ID, of course, because IDs are created by Sequelize itself. So we're going to force true because we're creating associations probably. So generally you're always going to force true in your first seed script because the only time you're seeding is when you're going to draw everything. So that's just some user feedback. And then for each one, we're going to promise.map. The first argument to promise.map is an array or iterable of some kind. And the second is the callback function. So in this case, we're just going to return location.create of that location object. So that's a promise. Again, it gets returned. So promise.map doesn't resolve. Similarly, kind of like promise.all until all those promises have resolved. But they just doesn't matter which order they happen in. And then we just log how many are created. We do that for each of them. We say that they seeded successfully. If there's an error, we handle that, of course. And then finally, we close the database, and then we return null. If you want to see some better commented out versions of why lines 141 through 143 are here, check out the trip planner seed file. It's good because some of this stuff is just explained. The db.close, like why we use it finally, and then we close the database. Ultimately, that'll happen anyway. That'll time out, but that just means it happens more quickly. And then returning null, I believe, is just about silencing some Bluebird angry error message that's not really an error, but sort of a warning. This is another way, which actually is a little bit closer to how it's done in Trip Planner. We create one object with a key for each of these things: location, puppy, food, and park. You'll notice those are also the same exact name as defined in the model itself. That first argument to the model, which is the name of it. And what we do is we do a promise.map over the object.keys of all data. So that's food, park, puppy, etc. And we take that name and then we map over with that name. We say all data name, right? So that would be like park data itself. And that's the array that we're going to iterate over. We take each element in that one and we say db.model name. That's going to give us food, for instance. So if we do like db.model food, that's going to give us the food model. And so then we can just do model.create with that. So it's a little bit more modular, again, like a little bit more fits on fewer lines, a little bit less like .then, 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 .then. But also you need to design it in a way that that's going to work. And it's for people who are newer, it's a little bit harder to sort of understand exactly what's happening. It's just, a lot of nested iterators and things like that. So both of these basically do the same thing. One may do it a little bit faster than the other. I'm not sure. Probably not in this case, but two ways. I'll leave them both in there so you can see them. There's also an associations seed file called seedassociations.js in the final repo that you can check out. It does some pretty interesting things for seeding them all together. All right, thanks for watching.